guys, what's up? It's me again, Tom from TDT Tom's Tech Time. Today we want to throw a look at the best camera settings for the DJI Phantom 4. Let's get right into it, and I want you to be a better filmmaker after watching this video. Leave a thumb up. The first thing you want to do is you want to turn on your DJI Phantom 4 and your remote controller, and you want to connect the remote controller to your mobile device. In this case, I am using an iPad mini 2. Keep in mind that the DJI Go app performs and looks a little different on the different devices, so no worries, the camera settings are the same even if the menus look a little different. First of all, let's just hit the camera button, and that brings up the live view. And now let's just hit at the menu button up here, right on top of the camera menu. And next we switch over to the video menu because we don't want to talk about photos too much today. And the first thing that we are going to take a look at is the video size by simply tapping at it. And currently it is set to 4K 4096 by 2160. With a frame rate of 24 frames per second. But actually we want to lower the quality down to UHD, Ultra HD. Why is that so? Ultra HD is only a tiny little bit smaller. 4K is a little wider than UHD. That is the entire difference, and it finally means that Ultra HD over 4K creates no black bars at the top and bottom because Ultra HD is a 16:9 format. Just as our TV screens and our computer monitors and stuff like that, and it's easier to work with. And next to that, and that is the main thing why we actually choose Ultra HD over 4K, is that Ultra HD features 30 frames per second, which means that your images will look more fluid. It will simply be a lot easier to work with 30 frames per second if you are, for example, rotating the copter in air or something like that. So choose Ultra HD, which is 3840 by 2160 with a frame rate of 30 frames per second, and you will be good to go. Next up is the video format. And if we open that up, we can choose between MOV and MP4. And the decision is quite simple. It simply depends on your computer. What does your computer work better with, MOV or MP4? My computer is a Microsoft computer and it works better with MP4, while I have experienced that many Apple computers work a lot better with MOV. So it doesn't matter, the quality is the same. I'm going to choose MP4 in that case. The next thing is NTSC PAL, and NTSC and PAL are actually region codes or regional codes. And there is a whole big story about PAL and NTSC. Those are different formats for different regions, while NTSC is the regional code for North America and Japan. PAL is the main code for Europe, and actually, everyone should be choosing NTSC if flying outdoors. For indoor flying, it's a little more complicated, and you might want to click at the link in the description that is linked to the Osmo camera settings tutorial, where I talk in depth about PAL and NTSC for indoor filming. But because we fly 99% outdoors, let's just choose NTSC, everyone, because if we would choose PAL, let me just hit PAL, and now the camera is going to restart. Just give it a second and it will be back up. If we are choosing PAL, there is one big thing about it that I don't like. And that is if we go back into the video size menu, we see that 25 frames per second is the maximum frame rate available with PAL. But we want to be able to film with 30 frames per second. And that is, of course, why we are now going to choose NTSC again. And again, the camera will restart. No worries if it turns itself on and off quite a few times. So now that things are set onto NTSC, let's just head back and let's continue our little trip, and let's tap at white balance. First of all, what does the white balance do? The white balance is kind of the color tool inside a camera. It only wants to make white images, white parts of the image, for example, paper or white walls. It wants them to look white. Do not play around with those settings as sunny, cloudy, and whatever we're having here. Those settings make the image look either a little more bluish or reddish. Don't play around with those. If you want to set things yourself manually, you can tap at custom and play around with the Kelvin down here. but being honest, I would always use the auto white balance. It has been working out greatly for me. I don't know, from the Phantom 2 Vision Plus over the Phantom 3 over the Osmo, and now with the Phantom 4, it seems that the white balance set onto auto is working great. So set it onto auto, and next off is the style, and now things start getting interesting, and we can decide whether we want to increase or decrease the sharpness, the contrast, and the saturation. And even though it sounds pretty cool and it sounds pretty exciting if we say, okay, we can raise the sharpness, do not raise the sharpness. Why is that so? If you would want to raise the sharpness, you could always do that in post-production. Each and every software from Adobe Premiere Pro to Magic's Movie Edit Pro, they all support, they all have a sharpness tool included, and you could play around with that. But sometimes digital sharpness doesn't look that nice, being honest. And that's actually why we want to lower things down, because we want to create a flat image, a pretty grayish image. And we can already see that now it's getting pretty dark. And we lose many details if we raise the contrast, for example. And we want to have all those details in the shadows or highlights. We want to capture those, and we then want to decide ourselves in post-production whether we want to use those and whether we want to raise the contrast or not. And that is actually a pretty professional thing to do. So we tap at each and every of these settings at custom, and we lower them down to -2, all of them. And now the image looks a little, we couldn't even say less sharp, it's perfectly sharp. It looks a little less saturated, and the contrast is reduced as well. And that is pretty cool for post-production. And we can continue by tapping at color. Inside the color submenu, we can now play around with some color styles. For example, we could choose art, or black and white, or vivid, or beach. And I must say, beach looks pretty cool. It looks pretty old-fashioned. I like that style, being honest. But even though I like it, I wouldn't be choosing it. Why? Simply, I don't want the camera and the software to decide itself what the image is finally going to look like. I want to be in charge myself in post-production, and I'm not going to set this to none. I am even going to set this to D-Cine-like or to D-Log. And those are two very, very flat styles. I mean, only take a look at the shadows, and you can see that all of that is, I don't know, many details are lost again as just before. And if I tap D-Log, we see that many details pop up, and we are having many details in the highlights and the shadows, and that is actually a pretty cool look. And if you are watching, I don't know, modern cinema, modern films, you will often see that cinematic productions are held in kind of a grayish tone, and we can start with that by choosing D-Log. And here I prefer D-Log over D-Cine-like. It's even more flat, and it's actually a cool look. And you can, if you don't like that look, you simply take the footage into post-production, and I don't know, you raise the contrast and the saturation, and everything will be like if you would have set it to none. And that is actually pretty easy and cool. But that way, if you choose D-Log, you can start working in post-production on the footage, and you can start editing like a pro. And I think that was, come on, what's wrong? And I think that was already it. But right now, let's just head over to this tool at the upper right-hand side. And now let's just talk about our little, I don't know, helping hands, our little tools. First of all, let's just enable the histogram. The histogram, that mountain-alike looking thing, is a very, very helpful tool. And I really like it. And what does it actually show? It shows us the lighting of the scenery. And if those mountains are held in the middle, your image is properly balanced. And if those mountains are at the right-hand side, we know that the image is too bright, that many details are lost because the image is too bright. And if those mountains are at the left-hand side, we know that the image is too dark. And as we can see, the image is pretty much perfectly lighted currently. And this is a very, very helpful tool. It always sounds too easy lighting a scenery or setting up a camera, but it already happened to me. And once the image is too bright, overexposed or underexposed, it can simply happen that your images look crappy, and you cannot retrieve those details that you are losing then in post-production. I mean, it's not that easy. And I would always use the histogram, simply drag it down here and keep I'm just gonna close the map, and keep an eye on the histogram, and it's very, very helpful. Next up is the video caption. I would leave the video caption disabled. As a cinematographer, I must say that I don't need the video caption. The video caption records like flight data, like GPS data and stuff like that. If you are, I don't know, if you like that stuff, turn it on and then you can watch it in the VLC media player, for example. But as a cinematographer, I must say, no, I don't need the video caption. So I'm gonna leave it turned off. Next up, let's take a look at the overexposure warning. And it's too dark already. We cannot see it right now. The overexposure warning creates a zebra. And that zebra, I mean, the zebra is black and white stripes, and people often think that their camera is broken, and they say, "Oh, what are these stripes for in the image? Is the camera broken? Is the sensor broken, or something like that?" No, simply turn the overexposure warning off. And actually, I do not need the overexposure warning because I have the histogram turned on already, and that would tell me if something was overexposed. I do not need that one. Next up is the 3D noise reduction function, and that is actually new. The DJI Phantom 3 did not feature that one, and I would say turn it on when filming during nighttime or in the evening, and turn it off during daytime, because I simply don't like if the software interferes with the material, with my material, and with the settings that I have set up myself, because usually my settings are perfect and I don't want the software to do anything stupid. If I want to play around with it, I would do that in post-production. I would try to remove the noise that way. But for nighttime flying, I have experienced the 3D noise reduction to be helpful. And it simply reduces the noise out of the image. You have probably already seen that. Many photos or videos that were taken during the dark hours, they are pretty noisy, and the 3D noise reduction is supposed to prevent that. But let's just turn it off right now. I don't need it at any time. Next up is the grid, and the grid is pretty cool. I mean, now that sounds too fancy, it's pretty cool. It's only lines. We either have the grid lines, or we have the grid plus diagonal lines, or we have the center point only. I am always choosing the grid lines, not too much, not too many fancy lines on the screen, but those lines are quite helpful. You can, for example, let me just close that down. You can, for example, easily find out whether your gimbal is set correctly or if it is tilted wrongly. And next to that, we can keep some film rules in mind. For example, the rule of thirds. That says that we want to keep interesting looking objects set here, where those lines meet, and not in the center of the image. It simply looks more interesting. It adds some depth and stuff like that. And next to that, for example, if we are playing around with the POI, the point of interest function, where the DJI Phantom circles around an object, we want to keep that object in the middle of the image, and we can of course take a look if the object is in the middle or not. I am always leaving the grid lines turned on. It's a good thing. Next up is the anti-flicker. The anti-flicker is again very interesting for indoor flights, and it plays together with the regional codes. If you're not flying indoors, let's keep it on auto, because auto usually works out pretty well. The anti-flicker only refers to electric light. So if you're flying indoors or something like that and you need to set up your camera, again, watch the Osmo camera settings tutorial of mine. That can be found, I mean, the link can be found in the description of this video. So let's just head back. No, I don't want to close it, I want to head back. Next up is the file index mode that we can either set to reset or continuous. The difference is quite interesting. Reset says that if you are recording files, if you are filming something with your DJI Phantom, you may start at DJI 001, DJI 002, DJI 003 and stuff like that. You then take the micro SD card out of your copter, put it into the computer, copy and paste the files onto your computer. Not copy, you just delete them from the card now. You put the card back in place into the copter, and you start recording again. And again, the copter will start at DJI 001, DJI 002, DJI 003. If you set this onto continuous, once you have copied the files to your computer, it would now start at DJI 004, DJI 005, DJI 006, and it would start counting up. And I always choose continuous for a simple reason. Computers usually do not like files with the same name, and it can easily happen that you overwrite some old files that you needed still. And because we want to prevent those accidents from happening. That's why we are going to choose continuous. Even if you do not need it, turn it on. It's a safety thing. Only if you once overwrite your files, that can already cost you a lot of money or fun or whatever. So we want to set this to continuous for sure. What's wrong today? Always pressing next to the menu, not at the menu. Next is reset settings. We don't want to do that right now. And finally, we can format our micro SD card. Even though I would not recommend that if you don't need it, because keep in mind that if you format your micro SD card, the data will be lost that was currently stored on the micro SD card. So only do that if there is nothing else that you can do to recover your micro SD card's functions or the functionality of it. Let's just turn this off. Let's now head over to the menu. That is very interesting to us because we use it each and every time we want to film with our DJI Phantom 4. We can find it down here, just tap at it. We see that two submenus pop up, the auto submenu and the manual submenu. And if you are the type of guy that says, oh, I just want the DJI Phantom 4 to do the job for me, then keep things set onto auto. But if you say, I want to create a cinematic, a filmic look, definitely choose manual. It's not that hard to do, no worries. There are only a few rules that you should keep in mind. The first rule is to keep the ISO at the top as low as possible. What does the ISO do? The ISO is a tool that helps us to brighten an image. For example, during nighttime filming, you really need the ISO because it will simply be too dark most of the time. And I would always try to stay at under, or let's just say, use the ISO with a maximum of 400. And if that is not possible, if you need a higher ISO, choose 800. If you go higher, you will have too much noise inside the image. But again, for daytime filming, and always the rule is to keep the ISO as low as possible, which is 100, and that is perfect. Next off is the shutter speed down here. What does the shutter speed do? Let's just take a look at the image. We see that the image is too bright. We would have to make the shutter faster to create a perfect image. We can take a look down here if the mountains are in the middle. Now the mountains are in the middle and we see we are at 640, but 640 is wrong. Why is that so? If we wanted to use 640, we could simply head back to the auto menu. 640 means that the shutter speed is very, very fast. And if a shutter speed is fast, the image looks too crisp and too clear. Simply take a look at action scenes with blood splatters or something like that. And blood splatters are most of the time filmed with a very high shutter speed because it looks kind of cool, it looks kind of crisp, but that's too much for normal film situations. And there is a rule, and that rule says keep the shutter speed twice as high as the frame rate. And that is the perfect shutter speed for the correct amount of motion blur that we want to add to the picture. And our shutter speed should be set to 60 because we are recording with 30 frames per second, and 2 times 30 makes 60. And now we see that the image is too bright. How can we now darken the image? The ISO is already at the limit and the shutter is set correctly, and we can see that the EV says we are too bright. And down here, the histogram says it as well. The image is too bright. What can we do? It's quite simple. You take a look at tomstechtime.com and click at the gadgets page, and you will find a link pointing at awesome ND filters. And you simply screw those on because ND filters work like sunglasses for your gear. And yeah, simply the image will be darker and you can film with the correct shutter speed, and you won't have to set it to, I don't know, 640, 800, 1000 or something crazy like that. And you will have the perfect amount of motion blur added to the image. And yes, I can say that the DJI Phantom 3 filters work perfectly with the DJI Phantom 4, at least the advanced and professional versions filters. They work perfectly with the DJI Phantom 4. I have already tried that myself. And you should buy ND8, ND16 and ND32. And yes, in the summertime, you will need ND32 as well, even though that might sound crazy in the winter. Yes, that's how it is. And actually, right now, if you have set things up correctly, you could always hit at the record button and start recording. And if you already like and are into hitting buttons, you should definitely take a look at tomstechtime.com/donate, and you should hit at the donate button. It's a PayPal donation button, and if you leave a donation, I can keep up the work and create many more cool DJI Phantom 4 tutorials. Next to that, please don't forget to subscribe and share this message, share this film to the community. That way we will all end up as better cinematographers. And finally, what else can I say? I don't know. Stay tuned and fly safe.